Good evening and welcome to the Invictus Racing League's PlayStation Performance League Realistic Excuse me. Let's start that again. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Invictus Racing League's Realistic Performance League Spanish Grand Prix, brought to you in partnership with GridFinder.com. And hopefully your commentator will be able to get his words out for the next hour and a half. Of course, we got an 11-lap sprint race and a 33-lap feature race coming your way. Sadly, Mount could not be here with us tonight, so as I told him, they are stuck with the American. So good luck, everybody there, and just waiting for these drivers to arrive in the paddock. Not sure what the delay is at the moment, but we'll take this time to update you on the point standings, and it has been much the same for the majority of the season, with MDJ leading the standings, 214 points to Cameron Searle in second with 182, and then 176 points belonging to Rudo 24. Now, you want to know how important it is to show up for every race in the Performance League? Well, MDJ has done just that, and in every single race, the least amount of points that he has managed to score is 15, the most being 30. That was the third race of the season, and he has shown up for every single race. While, unfortunately, Cameron and Rudo, they have missed one race apiece, and actually Cameron has one race, the second race of the season, where he got a big whopping 0 points for that race. So that really goes to show you how much of a deficit you can get yourself in just by missing a single race. But MDJ going out there and keeping it consistent, and so far with just, well, 6 races remaining, counting tonight, looking good in the championship standings. But it's still not over yet, and Cameron and Ruda, they're going to be looking to make a late season charge for that championship. Of course, we will turn to the constructors as well, and you know, it's going to be much of the same with MDJ up there in the top spot. Of course, Keza is his teammate, KDJ Racing. They have 350 points, but a little bit of a closer battle in the constructors because Rudo and Bruce Lee Harding, the quick finishers, well, they have really ramped up the pace here, and they've got 334 points, so about a 16-point deficit to first place. And then Andrea Moto with Cameron Searle and ARL in third place with 306 points. That's your top 3. And we'll go ahead and take a look and see if we can get an update on what the holdup is. Not sure, like I said, what's going on. So still not sure what the delay is here, but hoping that we can get this race going sooner rather than later. Like I said, 11-lap sprint race, 33 laps for the feature. The sprint race will set the starting lineup for the feature, and it will also serve as a bit of a points opportunity for the top 8 finishers in the sprint race, and the points are awarded accordingly. Now, the Invictus Racing League, if this is your first time watching, actually awards the points a little bit different in the feature than the real-life F1. In the real-life F1, obviously the top 10 finishers will score points and the rest will not. But here in the Invictus Racing League, limited to our Performance League, if you finish the race, whether that be in 1st, 10th, 15th, 20th, you will score points. But the caveat is you are required to finish the race. You can be a lap down, but you have to finish the race. If you DNF, then that is no points scored. So that really kind of changes the dynamic of things, because if you're outside of the top 10, no longer are you just clawing your way up an unclimbable ladder. Now you're still fighting for points. You're not just fighting for an empty position. You are literally fighting for points that can make or break your championship. And personally, I like that format. And the fact that you have to finish the race to score those points ensures that these drivers do stay out there and stay competitive. It's an interesting and different take, and I really like it. I'll go ahead and turn to the comments here in just a moment. I see that you all are starting to tune in and take a look here. Of course, like I said, we are under a bit of a delay. Not sure what's going on. I will update you as soon as I have information there. And actually, it is Kelvin North, so that is Sir Spud, and he says we are waiting on one person, so good looking out. He is updating the chat before the commentator can update him. So once we get that one guy in here, then we'll be able to start our races, and so that should mean that we're going to have about a 15 car field for tonight. So a little bit short of a full 20 car field, but all the same, these 15 cars, they can put on a fantastic show. But you want to talk about car counts in races? I commentate at a local track in my area, and it's a 3/8 mile concrete oval, and they recently added a division there called Legend Cars. Now you can Google these, you can look them up, and they are essentially like half scale body wise, cosmetically they are half scale cars of like 1930s Ford coupes. That's what the bodies are designed to look like, but they're very small, and the wheelbases are very short, but they race these things over here in the southeastern United States, and this track has just added this division. Only 2 cars unfortunately have shown up, but those 2 cars just so happen to be twin brothers and out of the exact same team. So the cars are built basically identical. The setups are tuned to the driver, but these drivers, 2 cars out there for 10 laps, running, I'd say, lap times that differ from hundredths to thousandths of a second. It's just a constant drag racing. You wouldn't think that a 2-car race would be entertaining, but it was fantastic. In the first race of the season, it was actually a photo finish. I think it was a few hundredths of a second margin of victory. So it just goes to show, it doesn't matter how many cars are out there. As long as you've got 2 cars, it can make a race. Oh boy, I hear the clock ticking down. That means that my stalling for time has finally came to an end, and I can actually get back to talking to what is relevant, that being this race. Now, we're loading into the sprint race. This will be 11 laps. This will set the starting lineup for the feature race, and the top 8 finishers will be able to score points. Now, that's just the top 8 in the sprint race. In the feature race, like I said, if you finish the race, you will score points. But for the sprint race, it is limited to the top 8 finishers scoring points. Now, of course, we will have to give these drivers... Oh, well, I was going to say we'll have to give these drivers just a minute to make sure that they can get their setups to their liking. However, it looks like someone has more or less readied up a little bit sooner rather than later, so we might be jumping straight into this thing, and there's going to be no formation lap. We're going to go straight to green flag racing. So the question is, do we load here on the grid, or are we in the paddock? We are actually in the paddock, so that is actually good. I thought for a moment that we were going to load straight onto the grid, and the reason that would be a bit of a problem is these drivers do have to put their setups into these cars. And it is actually a rule that you are not allowed to ready up until an admin okays you to go. That way, every driver has an equal amount of opportunity to put the setup in the car, because obviously after the sprint race or after qualifying, if it's a division that does short qualifying in other leagues or whatever, you cannot make those adjustments. So once we give them a few minutes here, like I said, no formation lap, straight to green flag racing. And if this is your first time watching the Performance League, you are in for a fantastic treat. We've had some very close races this season. This is the 10th round of a 15-round season. So counting this race, 6 races remaining to decide the championship. And like I was updating you earlier, MDJ leading with 214 points to Cameron Searle's 182. So a little bit more than a full race gap that MDJ has over Cameron, but that's not an unovercomable gap for Cameron, and you know that he is going to be looking to get some consistent finishes, maybe go out there, get some wins, and try to challenge MDJ for this championship. But MDJ has been by far one of the most consistent drivers all season. In 9 races so far, has not scored less than 15 points in a race. And we have just got the word that it is time to go. So it's time for these drivers to, well, if they're not ready, they need to be ready now because they've got 25 seconds now until it is time to go green flag racing for this 11-lap sprint race. Now, the way that we set the sprint race lineup is a reverse grid from the finishing order of the previous race. That does not count DNFs. Any DNFs or drivers who did not start, they will still have to start in the back, but out of the drivers who finished, that is just a reverse grid order. So that's what you will see here as we load onto the grid, and it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 red lights in the air, and no red lights, and we are green for the 11-lap sprint race, and we have got Bruce Lee Harding and Sir Spud, your top two at the moment, but Joe Hamster in the Alpine making some moves as we've got 3 wide for third place. Oh, and the Ferrari of Sir Spud drives it in very deep into turn number 1, almost gets into the back of the Alpine. Joe Hamster hangs on to second spot, and meanwhile, we have Rick there, 47 Rick, in the Aston Martin, going around Daryl actually going around him. It's a side-by-side battle for the third position, but we have Rick in the Aston Martin, Daryl in the Red Bull, as Bruce Lee Harding in the Mercedes pulls away. Looks like that Aston Martin, he has got the advantage, and Daryl has to fall back in line, looking on the inside, but can't do anything with it, has to follow him through. Now, going up this hill here, you've got to be very careful. You can use those curbs, but if you get them too much, you're going to get some wheel spin, especially there. Notice how the Aston Martin, he actually stayed off the curb, but he used the curb a little bit, but Daryl stayed off the curb. That is all about driver preference, as we actually have a side-by-side move just behind Daryl. That is Cameron Searle, second place in points, trying to get by Daryl, but he has got Speed Queen 80 underneath him. Speed Queen in the 6th position. Running on board with her as we are just about to complete lap 1. Bruce Lee Harding out to a 6/10 of a second lead, and here is your tire choices. Almost everybody going on the medium tires, save for Cameron and Speed Queen 80. Of course, no surprise there. Speed Queen 80, a driver who is used to going on the soft tires. She's very great at just conserving the tire life. It doesn't matter what compound, and you will see this every single race. She will just extend the tire life just a little bit longer than the other drivers. So she almost always goes to the soft tire in these sprint races, and sometimes she's able to make a lot of moves. Cameron Searle, though, he is stuck, along with Speed Queen. They're both just kind of stuck between these two cars of Daryl and 47 Rick there in the Aston Martin. And really, it looks like Daryl might be a little bit quicker than the Aston Martin is. Wow, he goes very wide. This could be Daryl's opportunity, but Rick shuts the door on him. Daryl looking on the inside, can't do anything with it, has to follow him through. Almost a bump, but they keep it clean. We stay green, and now Daryl gets underneath him. So there's Bruce Lee Harding. You see the gap between him and Joe Hamster, 1.6 seconds, as it's side by side for third behind him. Daryl just not giving up, but neither is Rick. But look at Daryl. Good job, Daryl, getting into P3. And Cameron Searle takes advantage, follows him through. So the Aston Martin of Rick losing 2 spots and 1. Cameron Searle move him up to P4. Speed Queen 80 now, right on board with her in the Haas. Using that curve just a little bit, maybe finding a little bit of grip there, and really hugging that inside line. And you saw how much she gained on that Aston Martin ahead of her just by taking the shorter line around that corner. Let's go ahead and take a look at the battle for second now between Joe Hamster and Daryl, because Daryl, he is just one of the quickest drivers in this sprint race so far, and Cameron Searle right on his gearbox, just following him through. Joe Hamster just leading a big train of cars, and this is the best thing for Bruce Lee Harding, as Daryl makes a move, trying to go into second place, but does he get the job done? Yes, he does. That was a nice, clean move from him, and now Joe Hamster into P3, trying to defend against a hard-charging Cameron Searle. And really, we're starting to see the benefit of the soft tires versus the medium compounds here. Some tracks on the schedule, you really don't see much of a difference, and then others, you see a huge difference. And at least for Cameron Searle, it is making a huge difference right now as he is just blown by Joe Hamster. Of course, DRS also benefiting him there as well. Now the question is, can Cameron get by Daryl? It's looking like Daryl and Cameron might be, you know, two of the quickest cars in this race, but I'm wondering, do they work together and try to catch Bruce Lee Harding, or do they just decide to battle it out with one another? In this sprint race, it really doesn't behoove you to take a lot of unnecessary risks because you still have a future race ahead of you that you have to deal with. So if you're Cameron, if you're Daryl, yeah, if you can catch Bruce and get by him, then you might as well. That's more points, a higher up starting position, but you don't want to wreck out and then end up starting in the back of the pack. That's when you run into issues, especially when you have cars as fast as these two drivers here. So sometimes you got to think, is it better to settle for third and still be able to have that track position in the race, or should you take the risk in the sprint? Personally, I would rather settle for third, and I'm sure that's what's going through these drivers' minds. All the same, though, when the move presents itself like it did for Cameron, you have got to take it. Daryl just having issues off that final corner, and Cameron at 120 flat, fastest lap so far. Wasn't an unnecessary risk. He just saw the move and took it. What is it that Ayrton Senna said? If you no longer go for a gap that exists, you're no longer a racing driver. Well, it may be overused, it may be beaten into the ground, but more or less, it is true, and that's what we saw Cameron go for. So now, 0.7 of a second is the difference between Cameron and Bruce Lee Harding. Now, Daryl, he has been able to stick with Cameron, and actually, as you saw, was pulling him for the longest time there to Bruce Lee Harding. Now, Bruce is in a Mercedes. Cameron is in the Aston Martin. This is the realistic performance, so it's exactly as it sounds. The Mercedes is a faster car than the Aston Martin. The Red Bull is also a faster car than both of those. So I find it very surprising that Cameron has been able to catch Bruce as quickly as he has. But that just goes to show you the benefit of those soft tires and just how fast Cameron is around here today. Now, to go back on the realistic performance, the slower drivers are allocated to the faster cars, and then the faster drivers are allocated to the slower cars. That way it ensures as even of a playing field as possible. And you see Cameron trying to get by Bruce, but can't make the move. He had a small opportunity to go on the outside, but just really ran out of straightaway, so he has to follow him through and up the hill here. Might have another opportunity, but his best bet would probably be to wait for the next DRS zone. That's actually what I was talking to you about earlier on in the races. This DRS zone that's coming up, you got to be very careful because some drivers like to use the curbs, some drivers don't. But if you use it too much, you can get wheel spin, and it can really cause the back end of the car to slip out from underneath you, and then you are going for a wild ride. But if you can get a good exit out of this corner here, then you have set yourself up nice and pretty for this DRS zone that Cameron's going to try to take advantage of against Bruce, but ran out of straightaway, was not close enough to make a move, so he's going to have another go at it going into turn one. You know, let's ride on board with Daryl. Daryl's about half a second behind this battle here, so we can have a front row seat from the track of what's going on between these two drivers. So you have to maximize your exit out of that final corner. And you see Bruce trying to swerve to break the slipstream. Really can't do anything about it. And there goes Cameron. Maybe a small bit of contact, but Cameron was able to get the move done on Bruce. Bruce moves down to P2. Now, does Daryl get by Bruce? So it's Cameron, Bruce, Lee Harding, and Daryl, your top three, with Rudo 24 and Speed Queen 80. Your top five, it's lap 7 of 11 right now. So closing in on the final stages of this race. And, well, there's the tire performance for Daryl. That's actually a new graphic. I have not seen that before. But all the same, it's good to have. So Bruce Lee Harding is 7/10, 8/10 of a second now. So he will have the DRS here, but I'm not sure how much it's really going to benefit him. He's going to have to stay within the 1 second margin if he's going to have the DRS down the front straightaway, and that's when it's really going to make a difference because Cameron is not going to have any DRS, but he will have those soft tires working for him. It's going to be close for Bruce, but just maybe he can stay within that 1 second range, but it looks like he's only just out of it. 1.2 seconds now as well. Daryl spins just behind him into the pit lane entry. So he's going to lose at least 2 spots here, 3 spots, 4, 5 spots. Surprised I can count that high, but hey, you learn something new every day. Daryl now loses 6 spots down to P9 just from one single mistake. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier is, do you want to make a risk, take a risk, and risk that happening? Now, Daryl, he really did not take a risk. He was just driving. He was holding his line. He wasn't doing anything out of the ordinary. It was just a simple mistake. And that can happen regardless. And it was just luck of the draw, I guess, that it happened to Daryl, unfortunately. So he's going to have some recovering to do when the race comes around. Of course, he can at least gain a few positions here. He is definitely a fast car, but that is going to take a little bit off of his tire life. So now we got Speed Queen 80, who has inherited a position and fighting for the 3rd position now against Rudo 24. Now 7 laps on these tires, so these soft tires are probably starting to give up the ghost here. You see Speed Queen 80 using that DRS, but could not get around Rudo that time. 0.7 of a second separating those two drivers. We might have to take a look at the battle for the lead here, because it looks like Bruce Lee Harding is actually closing in on Cameron Searle, about 0.4 of a second between them. And he will have DRS out of the final corner. This will be lap 9 of 11. 3 laps to go here. And you see Bruce, he's really gaining on Cameron. Might have an opportunity into one. He does go down low, but he runs out of time, so he has to follow him through. Now, if Cameron can have about 3 more straightaways just like that, he might be okay. But I'm starting to think that these soft tires are giving up the ghost a little bit. And we are seeing these medium tires really come into play. And this is something that Cameron and Speed Queen 80, and for that matter, all of these drivers, need to take note of. Is about 7 or 8 laps on these soft tires, you start to lose some speed. So 0.4 of a second now, and it's coming to 2 laps to go. Thinking Bruce Lee Harding might be able to get the move done on Cameron this time, and you see just how much time he has gained. Behind him, Speed Queen 80 struggling to actually stay in the DRS. You can see her back there in the Haas trying to chase down Rudo. Now Bruce, he does have the DRS, but it looks like Cameron had a bit of a defense mechanism going. So Bruce actually did not gain a lot there. So I'm wondering, though, what does that mean for the battery level on Cameron? Now, when Cameron uses that battery, when he's out, you will see that red light flashing on the back. And that's going to be a cue that Bruce is going to be looking for. However, it's very possible that Cameron has also saved his ERS for the very end, knowing that those soft tires would start to wear down a little bit, and he can defend against Bruce. All the same, we're going to be coming up to the last lap here when they come back around, so Bruce is not going to have a lot more opportunities to get around Cameron, but he is right there on him, and this could be the opportunity he's waiting for. Cameron rides the middle of the track. Actually, I think he managed to gain on Bruce a little bit and extend that gap. On board with Bruce, and we're going to take a look and see from his perspective how much he can gain on Cameron or lose on Cameron, as it looks like the Aston Martin getting a much better exit out of that final corner, but where he has a good exit, Bruce has that DRS, and this will be the final lap, and you see that he was gaining on him a lot, then it almost stalled there when they got to the end of the pit wall. .3 of a second. Bruce Lee Harding, if he is going to win this race, he is going to have to make a bit of a gutsy move. And again, you got to think it's really not worth it. He's running in second place right now. That's a fantastic starting position. and he's going to have a chance to fight Cameron as soon as the lights go out. So unless he can get by Cameron with relative ease, which I just don't see happening because Cameron has been on point, he doesn't need to worry about this race win. He just needs to worry about the feature race. And I think that that's exactly what we're going to see from this Mercedes driver, but still going to have another opportunity here, using the DRS, closes in on him, but again, just cannot get there in time to make a move on the inside. Now, them fighting a little bit, that has actually allowed Rudo to close the gap a little bit, 1.3 seconds. If we had a few more laps to go, then Rudo would be a factor in this battle. All the same, with just a few more corners to go, Rudo is going to have to settle for P3 there as Bruce Lee Harding. Whoa, what's happened to Bruce Lee Harding? Something happened there. He had a big mishap, maybe a spin or half spin or something, but Bruce Lee Harding is going to have to settle now for third place. Rudo will inherit second place due to a mistake from the Mercedes. Cameron Searle will win the sprint race. Decent haul of points for him, starting first for the feature. 33 laps for our feature race, but really want to know what happened to Bruce Lee Harding here. In fact, I will rewind the stream. I'll take a look and see if I can figure it out. Unfortunately, we do not have replay capabilities to broadcast, but I can at least look back on the stream. And going through that final chicane, it was just like Bruce pulled over a little bit. So maybe a mistake, maybe not. All the same, Bruce Lee Harding P3 instead of P2. So we've got Spud, Scotty, and Gam88. So evening to every one of you. There is your sprint race winner of Cameron, and if everything goes as planned for him, the feature race winner, but we have 33 laps to decide that one. All the same, your sprint race results and your starting lineup for the feature will be Cameron in first, Rudo in second. Third place is Bruce Lee Harding. Fourth is Speed Queen 80. Fifth is ARL. Sixth is 47 Rick. 7 is Nitro Gash Daryl W. In 8th, 9th is Mikey. Then 10th is Martin. Cassidy in 11th. Ginger Tiger in 12th. Joe Hamster in 13th. Sir Spud in 14th. JP in the 15th position. An unfortunate DNF for JP, so he'll have to go from the back to the front. So this is also very important because Cameron Searle is in a championship battle with MDJ. Rudo is also in that championship battle too, actually. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't believe that we have MDJ with us today. Unless, of course, I'm just completely blind. But if MDJ has actually missed the race, on the very race that I was bragging before we started that he had not missed any this year, then this is going to be a huge points opportunity for Cameron and Rudo. So we're going to have 33 laps for this feature race. And now that we've had the sprint, these drivers, they know what these tires are going to do. And what I was seeing in the sprint race is about 7 laps in, you're going to see the soft tires start to lose speed. That tells me that anywhere from 7 to 10 laps, you're going to see these drivers pit and go for the mediums or the hards, whatever their preference is. Now, I could be completely wrong, but that's going to be, my guess is what you're seeing, about 7 to 10 laps on the soft tires, unless they just try to go for a medium to hard strategy. Of course, I'd say that there will be a few drivers, maybe even outside the top 10, that could theoretically use those soft tires to gain track position. So not sure what the delay is here on this one, but hopefully we will be ready to go sooner rather than later. And actually, judging from the chat, it looks like that there is a bit of a disagreement among a few drivers over some potential incidents in the sprint race. Of course, I won't be naming any names, but you know that just goes to show, though, that even in the world of sim racing and league racing, sometimes that there are some disagreements among the drivers. Of course, if it's anything like the local short track scene here in the southeastern United States, then they'll be mad one week, and then the next week they'll be best friends again. So that's just how it is, though. But it really seems as though that's how it works in the racing world. And even when you watch Formula One or NASCAR or anything, but we'll talk about that later because it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 red lights in the air. No red lights, and we are green, green, green for the Spanish Grand Prix. Cameron Searle and Rudo, your top two. Bruce Lee Harding trying to push Cameron Searle out to the lead, now getting to the lead of his own. Looking underneath him, it's going to be side by side into turn number one. Bruce Lee Harding, he had to back out of it, but we've got Rudo trying to go around the outside. Can he find a gap there? No, he can't, but look at Speed Queen 80 on the inside of Rudo trying to go for P3. Speed Queen 80 holding on strong into P4 there, side by side behind her with the Aston Martin of Rick and ARL in the Haas. And you got Daryl in that Red Bull really stuck. And Daryl, you saw he was one of the quickest cars in the sprint race earlier today, but unfortunately, because of a spin out of the final corner late in that sprint race, he has to work his way up from the back. In P6, though, right now is Daryl, as you're watching Bruce Lee Harding give chase to Cameron Searle, much like it was in the sprint race earlier. Here are your tire choices. And everyone almost going for the medium tires. A few of them going for that reverse strategy on the hards. And Cameron Searle, the lone driver, starting on the soft tires. And so far, it is working for him. 1.5 seconds ahead of Bruce Lee Harding, trying desperately to break that DRS gap. And looking like he's going to be able to do it. Cameron Searle, fastest lap on lap one. No surprise there. Rudo, very close to Bruce Lee Harding, making a move into P2. Does he clear him, though? Yes, he does. So move Rudo up into the second position. So while we've got these guys up front jostling around for position, I'm going to go ahead and take a look just real quick at Daryl back here in P6. Like I said, he was quick in the sprint race, and due to a mistake, he has to start in the back. So he has decided to go onto the hard tires. That's going to extend that first stint before he has to pit. And I'm going to keep my eye on him as well as Nitro Gash and see just when and how quickly they are able to make their way up through the field, because theoretically these hard tires should just get better as the run goes on. P5 right now of Rick. 47 Rikimaru, to be precise. Of course, he's one of our PC players. We have introduced crossplay in the Invictus Racing League this season, so we welcome our PC players, that of course being Cameron Searle and 47 Rick. Cameron once again fastest lap, a 120.523. And now that the DRS is enabled, you're going to start seeing some moves, but Speed Queen 80 half a second behind Bruce Lee Harding, who really is going to be leading in training cars here before too long, because he's just really seems to be struggling here at the Spanish Grand Prix. Rudo 3.3 seconds behind Cameron, but he has managed to extend a gap of about 1.5 seconds ahead of Bruce Lee Harding. And Joe Hamster looks like he's had an issue dropping down through the pack. That is a yellow flag in Sector 1, but no safety car. We will stay green. Right on board with Speed Queen 80. See what kind of a run she can get in this DRS zone. So now we're going to see Speed Queen 80 really set Bruce Lee Harding up in position. And I'm seeing her get around him and get into this third position this time. Not sure what's going on with Bruce, but it seems like he's very fast for the first few laps, and then his times just drop off. And that's exactly what we saw in the sprint race. He got a great start. There was some battling behind him, so he got out to a decent lead. And then Cameron ran him down, and then Rudo ran him down. Now side by side for third, but it's a quick, easy, clean. Oh, no, it's not a quick, easy, clean battle as Bruce Lee Harding's fighting back on the inside, side by side. Not going to let Speed Queen 80 have it that easily. Speed Queen 80 holding on strong on the outside, but she could have the advantage into this next corner, except Bruce Lee Harding, with a little bit more speed, is able to get the position and clears the Haas driver. So fantastic defending from the Mercedes of Bruce Lee Harding. Speed Queen 80 having to go back on the offensive. Now look behind Speed Queen. We've got 47 Rick just behind her. So now we got this 3-car battle for the third position. But if these drivers don't start making moves, then we could have a 4-car battle, because look at Nitro Gash on those hard tires. Nitro Gash, P6, and actually that's something that we need to take note of, because Daryl must have had another issue, because he's all the way down in the 13th position. So Nitro Gash now the highest running driver on the hard compound tires. Now the gap was about 1.5 seconds between Rick and Nitro Gash about half a lap ago, so Nitro Gash not really making any big gains so far. And JP disqualified from the session, parked in a dangerous location. So going to be a little bit of clarification on that. Unfortunately, we cannot reverse that decision. JP will have to be scored as the 15th place driver, but it's not that he decided to park there. Likely what happened is he could have spun either at pit entry or pit exit, and F1 2022 automatically made that disqualification. Sadly, the Invictus Racing League, we do not have any power to change that during the race, so JP is stuck in the 15th position. Going to be a rough day for him. Let's go back and take a look at Speed Queen gaining on Bruce. Now, Rudo, Bruce, Speed Queen, Rick, all these drivers, as you can see, started on those medium tires. So as far as the compound goes, there's not going to be any difference. This is just going to be raw pace and DRS benefiting these drivers. That being said, it does look like Bruce Lee Harding has found a little bit on the defensive side. He just kept dropping back and dropping back, that gap between him and Rudo getting larger and larger. But once Speed Queen 80 gets into the mix, Bruce Lee Harding, he is able to defend. So it's almost like he needs another car to sort of gauge his performance off of. All the same, it's working well for him, and he is holding off not one but 2 cars. Meanwhile, Nitro Gas 1.6 seconds back. More or less that gap holding steady on those hard tires. Of course, it's lap 7 now, or it's going to be lap 7 here in just a moment, so that should be about when Cameron's tires start to slow down a little bit. Of course, here is the track map. We can take a look and see where Cameron is relative to the rest of the field. Cameron going to turn 1 now, so it's 6 laps on his tires now. This is the 7th lap, and in the sprint race, we saw that those soft tires start to wear down about 7 laps in. So let's watch that time between Cameron and Rudo. 7 seconds is the gap now, but Rudo's starting to actually chip away at it slowly but surely. But one big difference that Cameron has benefiting him in this race versus the sprint race is that in the sprint race, he had to make up position. He had to pass drivers. He had to race. This race, he started on the pole. once he got away from everybody, he's just been able to run his line. He doesn't have to push as hard as he did in the sprint race. So, theoretically, those soft tires, the window could be extended a little bit. Queen 80, meanwhile, right on the back of Bruce Lee Harding, and this is the opportunity she was waiting for around the outside, trying to go around Bruce. Will she get the job done? Not that time. My goodness, that was a very close call there. Speed Queen 80 out of that corner right when the DRS zone started, right on the gearbox of Bruce Lee Harding. Tried to go around the outside, couldn't get the job done. Also flirting with track limits, though. That's the thing. That's what you got to be careful about when you make these moves on the outside. Is it's so tempting to want to just throttle out and abuse those track limits. And well, the F1 2022 they don't like that. Speed Queen 80 having another go at Bruce Lee Harding, and this time it's 47 Rick trying to follow her through. Bruce Lee Harding could lose 2 spots for 1, go down to P5. Speed Queen gets through, and now 47 Rick gets through, but does he clear Bruce Lee Harding? Not this time, but going into the corner, he does. So Bruce Lee Harding loses 2 spots now, down to P5, and I'm afraid that his descent is just going to continue from here as Nitro Gash on those hard tires has finally caught these 3 cars here. And meanwhile, Darrell W., unfortunate DNF from this session. One of the fastest cars in the sprint race, but ultimately a mistake put him in the back of the pack, and he could not recover. So while we're watching this continuous ongoing battle for third, I'm watching the gap between Cameron and Rudo, and actually that lap Cameron was able to extend his lead over Rudo by about a second or so, 8.7 seconds now. And the longer Cameron can stay out on those soft tires, the more beneficial it is going to be for him, because you got to think, when you start on the soft tires, you are taking a risk. You're taking a gamble, and theoretically you do have to pit sooner than everybody else because those tires are going to wear down sooner. So that can help you from the undercut perspective, but if you get caught in traffic, then all that time that you could have gained is lost. But Cameron, starting on the pole and being able to conserve his tires from the lead, he's able to extend that window, maybe make it less likely that he does get stuck in traffic because he's pitting closer to everyone else's window. So you don't get stuck behind someone with 20-lap-old tires or 10-lap-old tires that can just barely make it around the track. Let's watch the battle between the 2 Mercedes here. That could be the one that's starting to heat up. Is actually Cameron Searle hitting from the lead after 9 laps on those soft compound tires. So now the question is, will other drivers react to that? And I think that they're going to have to, because Cameron, he's not going to lose an enormous amount of spots. Looking like it could be a P8 rejoin here. Yeah, it looks like P8 rejoin for Cameron. Maybe P9, but Ginger Tiger is just not close enough. So Cameron rejoins in the 8th position. And we'll actually take a look at him now. And he's went on the medium tires. So medium tires with about 23 laps to go. And I'd say that theoretically, those medium tires, they should be able to last the rest of the way. But that's also another question, though, is if the medium tires can last about 20 laps or so, and that's just a ballpark number, when does Rudo, Speed Queen, Rick, when do they pit? Because Cameron effectively has just undercutted him. He is going to be gaining time on these drivers because he's got fresher tires. So I think we're going to see a bit of reactionary moves in the pit lane here sooner rather than later. Speed Queen 80, though, currently 2nd place on the board with a train of cars behind her. That's 47 Rick, Bruce Lee Harding, and Nitro Gash running 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Rudo is your leader, though. Here's the Alpine, 6.7 seconds ahead of Speed Queen 80, so that's about half of that straightaway as we've got to move for 3rd. Bruce Lee Harding getting around 47 Rick there. I was going to say Nitro Gash there for a minute, but Nitro Gash, he's actually been playing it patient. And I think he knows that his tires are going to come to him and that these drivers are slowing down, so he's just trying to be patient and ride behind these guys. So Bruce now losing ground to Speed Queen there in 2nd place, and that's actually going to be very important for Speed Queen 80 because now she doesn't have to worry about Bruce, but also she doesn't have to worry about the 2 cars behind him. She can run her line, try to extend that gap a little bit, and maybe once they cycle through their pit stops, not have to deal with traffic. Still wondering, though, when drivers like Rudo are going to decide to pit now. We just saw IRL dive into pits now. That's after 11 laps on those medium tires. So if these drivers are only wanting to go 11 laps, then that would indicate that this is going to be a 2-stop race. Or, let me clarify, a 2-stop race for Cameron. Not necessarily for the drivers that started on the medium tires. If you started on the medium tires, you can go to the hard tires. The hard tires should have no problem lasting to lap 33. But with Cameron, he made soft tires last 9 laps. And if the medium tires are only going to last about 11 or 12, then he's coming up a few laps short. So that could suggest that he's looking at a 2-stop strategy. That's assuming, though, that he is not able to extend the life of those medium tires to make it to the end of the race. So it's going to be very interesting to see what Cameron has to do later on. Of course, you're watching the Aston Martin of Rick right now. Cameron in P6 at the moment. There you see him, but really not in any battles. About 2 seconds ahead of Martin and 1.1 seconds behind Nitro Gash, but slowly closing in on Nitro Gash here. Martin behind him decided to make a pit stop, lap 13 of 33, so Martin likely going to be going on to the hard tires. Of course, we saw IRL go on to the hard tires last time, so those drivers going to be going to the end here. Cameron about 0.6 of a second behind Nitro Gash. He is within that DRS range. The problem is, though, is that he's also in a DRS train, so it doesn't matter if he's got fresher tires. Nitro Gash is going to have DRS off of Rick. Rick is going to have DRS off of Bruce. So this is going to be a bit difficult for Cameron to navigate. Let's see what he's able to do here. Will he be able to make any moves here? He is gaining significantly on Nitro Gash. Nitro Gash tries to shut the door on him. Can't, though. A side-by-side battle as Cameron tries to go around the outside. Those fresh medium tires really allowing him to put the car where he needs it. Almost slides it, hangs onto it. What a fantastic piece of driving as Cameron has to regroup and try again. So he's going to get the DRS this time off of Nitro Gash, and maybe he'll have an opportunity to make a move. And Cameron looking on the inside. It's side by side into turn at number 1. Nitro Gash in the Mercedes. Cameron in the Aston Martin. And I think Cameron made the move. Yes, he did move him up to P5. Now he gives chase to his car allocated teammate of 47 Rick. Of course, that is just car allocated teammate and not his actual teammate. So let's take a look at the interval between Cameron and the leader. Cameron right now just 10 seconds behind Rudo. Now, you're going to lose approximately 20-25 seconds, give or take, in the pit lane as you see Cameron trying to defend against, or actually passing 47 Rick, excuse me, and now having his sights set on Bruce Lee Harding. So chipping away at that 10-second gap, but in the pit lane, you're going to lose about 20-25 seconds depending on the track. So when Rudo pits, obviously he's not going to be able to hold on to the lead, but it's important to watch this because Cameron might have been able to extend his lead even further due to this undercut-ish strategy. So Cameron gets into P3 now. Nitro Gash back there on the hard tires in P4. Speed Queen 80, though, about 2 seconds ahead of Cameron. 1.8 seconds is the gap from Speed Queen 80 to Cameron Searle. Back there in P3, Rudo still holding on strong, 9 seconds ahead of Speed Queen 80 in the lead. Lap 15 of 33, slowly approaching the halfway mark. And also another factor that I've got to think about here is with Cameron. He's been asking a lot of those tires, working his way up through the field. You saw him have that little half spin. He has definitely been using them and abusing them, which further tells me that this is going to have to be a two-stop strategy for him. Now, he's very quick, but I'm wondering if that's going to be the winning strategy. And maybe he expected more safety cars up to this point to sort of help him with that tire life. But I think it's going to be very interesting to see if he can actually, how much time he will gain after he pits again. Because I feel like he's going to have to. Because there's going to come a point to where those medium tires, even if he can make them last to the end, just aren't going to be competitive. Cameron 0.7 of a second behind Speed Queen 80. Could have an opportunity for an overtake in the next DRS zone. So I think what Rudo and Speed Queen 80 are going to try to do is actually hold out on those medium tires and go to the softs at the very end. And if they're able to do that, then that would suggest that Cameron can do the same. And that might be what we're seeing here. But then, which would be the better strategy? Mediums to softs or softs to mediums? Because this track, later on in this race, we get to the last 5-10 laps, it's going to be nice and rubbered in. Those soft tires are going to be flying. But Cameron, he's done a great job thus far of keeping his car clean, staying consistent, and fighting in order to ensure that he is able to take advantage of the gains that he was able to make early on. Now you're seeing Rudo make the pit for hard tires, so I was wrong at least on his tire strategy. He's going medium to hards. What does Speed Queen 80 do? Now remember what I was telling you in the sprint race. Speed Queen 80, very, very notorious for extending tire life. She is one of the best at conserving tires, so this could be a realistic one-stop medium to soft strategy for her. And also another thing to note is that even if Cameron gets by her, if she is able to stay with Cameron and stay in that DRS, then she could effectively use Cameron as a tow, and he could just tow her around the racetrack and help her gain a little bit on the competitors behind. Now, all this is in theory, and it works great in a perfect world, but how rarely these things fall together piece by piece perfectly, such as that. So maybe that's what Speed Queen's hoping for, and maybe that's what we're going to see. But as these laps wind down, I just keep thinking that we have to see Speed Queen go to these soft tires. That's going to be the only opportunity I think that she's going to have to get this race win. Ginger Tiger now pitting again from P5. Side-by-side battle for the lead. Meanwhile, Cameron Searle looking underneath the Speed Queen 80. And he gets the job done. No, he doesn't. Speed Queen 80 fighting back hard on the inside. Going to be a side-by-side battle still. At this point, which one is going to get the DRS? Surely they're going to have to back out when they go through the S's, side-by-side through the S's. Well, that's going to be a recipe for disaster, but they do manage to make it work somehow. Speed Queen 80, of course, backing out a little bit, going to use the DRS to her advantage. And you know what? Maybe that's exactly what she was wanting, too. But now we have to pay attention to that gap between Cameron and Speed Queen 80. She cannot let him get further than a second ahead, and that's going to be a very, very hard thing to do when you take into consideration that she has 17 laps on her tires versus the 8 laps that Cameron has. We saw drivers pit after about 11 or 12 laps on the medium tires, so that tells me that these tires should have speed at least for that long. And that's becoming very apparent as we're seeing Cameron just continue to extend that gap over Speed Queen. Now, right now, she's able to use the DRS to her advantage. She has closed that gap to about 0.4 of a second. But over the next couple of sectors of this racetrack, we're going to see Cameron pull away, and I don't think that it's going to be enough for her to keep that DRS, and that is so, so crucial. Already 0.9 of a second, but we saw Speed Queen 80 very quick through this sector last time. Maybe this could be your saving grace, but that gap just keeps growing and growing. 1.2 down to 1 second now. If she can stay in the DRS range, then this strategy can work for her if she's going medium to softs. And no DRS that time, and you know, honestly, that might be it, but she's committed now. Assuming that's going to be your strategy, and I just don't see why you would want to go on the hard tires at this point. We saw Cameron make the soft tires last about 9 laps. That was on full fuel. On less fuel, the soft tires, you can give them a few more laps, I'd say, and be safe. So here in the next lap or two, I do expect Speed Queen 80 to come into the pits and get the soft tires, so we might see the fastest lap come from this Haas car. So she might not be able to win this race, but she still could get the fastest lap. Although another driver that we do need to be paying attention to, Rudo P3, he pitted a few laps ago for those hard tires, 9 seconds behind Speed Queen 80, and that's effectively about 11.5 seconds or so behind Cameron Searle. Now you see Rudo 8.7 seconds now, so he is starting to chip away at that gap, and that's very important. We actually could potentially be looking at our race winner. Now, you might be thinking, if he's about 10 seconds or more back, then how is he going to be able to win this race? Well, those hard tires, they can definitely go a long, long way. And Speed Queen 80 will have to pit, whether it's for the hard tires or the soft tires. She's going to have to pit regardless. Cameron Searle, he doesn't have to pit unless the tires tell him to. That being said, the longer he stays out there, the more that those tires are going to wear and the slower that they're going to be. So really, I'd say that this one's going to be coming down between Cameron, Speed Queen, and Rudo. But also, when Speed Queen does pit, she's going to lose about 25 seconds to Cameron. And there you see, she's pitting now. So she's going to be losing about 25 seconds to Cameron. Rudo is going to be able to pass her now, inherit that second position. And now the question is, can Rudo chase down Cameron? He's got 10.7 seconds that he has to overcome, and he's got about 12 laps to do it. So if he can knock off a second per lap, then he should be okay. But right now it's looking like Cameron is faster than ever, actually, putting about 0.3 of a second between him and Rudo. And here is Speed Queen 80 going onto the soft tires. So you should be seeing her make some moves, and looking like a podium at least is in the cards for her if she's able to keep the car clean. 2 seconds behind Nitro Gash. But Nitro Gash, he has just pitted for those medium tires, so he has got fresh-ish tires, helping him as well. And now Cameron Searle making that pit stop, so he's going to be going on to the soft tires. And Rudo will inherit the lead. The question is, though, where will Cameron Searle come out? And will he be able to chase down Rudo? Remember, this is a championship battle between Cameron and Rudo and MDJ, but MDJ is not here today. MDJ has missed today, so that means that if Rudo and Cameron are able to score even 1 point, they have gained on MDJ. But it's looking like they are going to be in podium positions, and that is going to be a massive haul of points for them. But 9.4 seconds separating Rudo and Cameron. And Cameron has just 11 laps to take off about, we'll say about half a second or so to play it safe here. And right now, with cold tires, you're actually seeing Rudo extend that gap a little bit. So Cameron in the second sector, about to enter the third sector of this racetrack. And you see now that the time is starting to shrink just a little bit, 9.4 seconds between him and Rudo. Now he's starting to get heat into those soft tires. So Cameron, he is just going to have to drive constant qualifying laps to catch Rudo. And when he catches him, he's still going to have to get by him. But it's going to be very important to see what it is at the line. Remember, when he came out of the pits, it was 9.6 seconds. And when he crosses the line, it is about 9 seconds. So when he gets to turn 1, it's looking like he gained about 0.8 of a second that lap. So that was 0.8 of a second advantage going to Cameron Searle. That might be just enough. Maybe just enough to catch Rudo. Although Cameron Searle, he will have a decent amount of speed for quite a few laps here. Rudo, his tires are slowly going to start to wear down, but he's only got 6 laps on those hard tires, so that's not going to be a significant factor for quite a while. In fact, I'd say that we really don't have to worry about that until the last couple of laps of this race. But by that time, Cameron's tires will also be struggling. But the gap 7.6 seconds now. So now in just this one lap, Cameron has gained almost 2 seconds. That is by far enough to catch Rudo. But he's also asking about 2 laps more than he did on his first stint on the hard tires. Or excuse me, on the soft tires. He asked for 9 laps for his first stint. Now he's asking for about 11. But remember, slightly less fuel should benefit him. So it more or less cancels it out. And you saw Cameron Searle running the fastest lap, a 1:19 that time. So looking like he's a man on a mission, 6.6 seconds now. And we're just going to stay with this battle really for the rest of this race because Cameron, he's just cooking it here. And, you know, taking a look at Rudo, you see where he is going up through the S's and into the second DRS zone now, which does not do him any good right now. So that's where Rudo is at the end of that straightaway, going right underneath the Crypto.com banner. Oh boy, Crypto, we'll never escape it, will we? And then there is Cameron going underneath the same banner. So about 5.8 seconds now, but riding on board with Cameron, he can't see Rudo yet. Maybe down the pit straightaway, he'll be able to catch just a glimpse of the Alpine, but for the most part, he cannot see Rudo. He's just chasing him down. It's almost like he's chasing a ghost. In fact, there's his view down the pit straightaway, and even down the pit straightaway, you're hard-pressed to even find any movement. You could just see a little bit of movement going through turn 1. So that's pretty much what Cameron's chasing right now, is just that little glimmer of hope in front of him. Now, he is gaining about a second per lap, and that is enough to catch Rudo. And once he catches Rudo, he will have the DRS, so that will help him a lot as well. So we could see a nice knockout, drag-out battle to the finish here between Rudo and Cameron. So we'll go ahead and update you on the penalties here for just a moment. We got really only Joe Hamster, 6 seconds on time penalty, so that must have been some track warnings there. And other than that, everyone has been able to keep it clean, and no safety cars today as well. So these drivers just running pretty much the race of their lives, and right now Cameron, he has to run the laps of his life if he's going to win this race. And Daryl chiming in saying that he prefers watching from the pit. So Daryl, tell us exactly what happened here. This actually gives us an opportunity to talk to a driver. Daryl, what did happen? Because you were fast in the sprint race and you spun out of the final corner, and it just seemed like you could not get things to go your way in the feature. And meanwhile, 3.7 seconds, 3.6 seconds now between Rudo and Cameron. Lap 26 of 33, so about 7 laps or so remaining. Cameron Searle, I think he's finally gotten to the point to where he's chasing a car instead of just a glimmer. Yeah, you can just see the car up ahead of him. And Daryl saying that in the sprint race he got into the yellow curb and it sent him around. And in the feature he just lost it twice. And, you know, Daryl, that final corner, that really is a bit of a kicker because especially that final chicane, it is just, well, I can't say the word that I want to on stream, but I think that you can use your imagination. It is just terrible. Lap 27 of 33, and Cameron Searle 2 seconds behind Rudo. 5 laps on those soft tires. So in the sprint race, we said that about 7 laps is when the soft tires start to slow down a little bit. The tires aren't dead at that point. They just start to lose a little bit of speed. But I don't think Cameron's going to have to worry about that. He might be able to catch Rudo and benefit from the DRS before he has to deal with it. He's got a small chance of getting the DRS in this next zone coming up, but 1.5 seconds, he's going to be hard-pressed to get to him there. All the same, I think he's going to have DRS going into turn 1 this next time. So no DRS up the hill. But going into turn 1, we could see Cameron Searle at least get close to Rudo. And Cameron Searle now within the DRS range of Rudo. So now Rudo's going to have to start looking in his rearview mirror and thinking about defensive strategies. 0.8 of a second between these two drivers, and is the closing stages of this race. The DRS active for Cameron. Not going to see an overtake this time, but that DRS is oh so crucial to gaining the needed advantage. Almost half a second between Rudo and Cameron. Cameron might be able to use the second DRS to get into the lead, and then from there he'll just have to take care of his tires until the very end, and it should not be an issue at all for the soft tires to make it to the end of this race. They might be a little bit slower than they were before, but it should not be an issue for him to make it. The question is, though, did Rudo do a good enough job at conserving his tires while he was leading this race to have a challenge for Cameron? DRS once again, but Cameron not able to make any significant ground, but right on the gearbox of that Alpine is where he needs to be. Coming to 5 laps to go this next time. And Cameron almost in the back of the Alpine through the final chicane, had to check up and actually take a little bit of evasive action, but out of the final corner, you hear that beep, he's got the DRS, closing that gap. Cameron not able to do anything with it that time, but very close to the back of Rudo up the hill. Maybe trying to intimidate him a little bit as Rudo trying to protect the bottom at all costs here. And Cameron Searle looking on the outside of the corner, but Rudo with the preferred line, the shorter line. Oh, and both of them get very loose off the corner. We're going to have a drag race into this next corner. But Cameron Searle, he'll have the DRS. Rudo, he's going to have to defend. Does he go to the inside? No, he stays right there, and Cameron dives out at the last second. Cannot make the move and actually lost a little bit. No, he does a crossover. Oh, and he hits him. He spins. Cameron spins around, and Rudo hangs on to the lead now. Cameron, where does he rejoin? He'll hang on to the second position at least for now. But there went all hope at winning this race for Cameron Searle. He can try to push, but there's no way that he's going to be able to gain the 8.8 seconds back in just 4 laps time. And I'm going to have to go back and watch the stream and figure out what happened there, because that was just crazy. I'm wondering though if maybe Cameron clipped the curb a little bit and that's what sent him around, because he took a very, very wide arc into that corner, and it worked for him. He did the crossover, he was underneath of Rudo, and it looked like he was going to get the job done. Then he just spun the car straight around. Yeah, watching the replay, and it looked like Cameron, he just took a wide arc into that corner. In fact, this corner right here that we're approaching right now, very, very wide arc, and might have clipped that curb, maybe even got one of those yellow curbs, one of those yellow curbs of death, I guess we can say, and that ultimately spun him around. Whether it was a yellow curb or the red and white curb, just did not work according to plan, and it would have been such a beautiful move from the Aston Martin, using every bit of racetrack allotted to him. Lap 31 of 33 now, and watching Rudo cruise to what could be an easy win at the end of it, but that's assuming that he keeps his car on track at all times. Battle for 5th place between Bruce Lee Harding, ARL, and Martin. 3-car battle here. ARL with the DRS, but not making significant gains on Bruce. ARL, I'm thinking that his tires maybe are just starting to scream at him a little bit. We're seeing a little bit of wiggling and wobbling through these corners here. At least through that second sector. A little bit better, though, up through the hill. But I think at this point that ARL might just be content for the 6th position. Really not gaining a lot on Bruce. Can't really get to him. Lap 32 of 33 here, though, so 2 laps to go. Rudo still ahead. Cameron, though, he is chasing Rudo down. 5.3 seconds between those 2 drivers. Still no chance, I'd say, for Cameron to catch him, but you got to give it to him. He's at least trying. And ARL, once again, trying to make the move, but can't do anything with it. Here is Rudo, your leader, on the penultimate lap. And really, this answers the question, which was the best strategy, medium to hards or soft, medium, soft, which is what you saw Rudo and Cameron choose respectively. And if it had not been for that spin, I truly believe that Cameron could have had the better strategy. It's not to say that he would have won the race, because him and Rudo were really setting themselves up for about a 4-lap battle to the end of this thing. But without that spin, I'd say that Cameron at least had maybe the faster strategy, where Rudo seems to have the safer strategy. Start on mediums, go to hards, and the race sort of came to him. Where Cameron, he started on the soft tires, and he had to push. Then he went on the mediums, he had to push. Then he went back on the softs, and he had to push, and push too hard. So it just goes to show what, the different strategies, but also what works for a driver. Because if Cameron had decided to do Rudo's strategy and go from medium to hards, it might not have worked for him, because it's all about different driving style and just what is preferable to the driver. But I'll tell you, if we had maybe 2 or 3 more laps left, just maybe Cameron Searle could challenge for this lead, because Rudo is just 2.5 seconds ahead on this final lap. But going through the third and final sector, well, it's going to be all for naught. Cameron Searle, he just has to look ahead at what might have been and not what is. But with just one more chicane and a corner to go, it looks like Rudo in the Alpine is going to be triumphant today and win the Spanish Grand Prix. What an amazing victory, and it was a close call there for a while, but Rudo victorious in Spain. Cameron Searle, P2 and P3 belongs to Nitrogash. Speed Queen 80 looking like she's going to get that 4th position, then Bruce Lee Harding in 5th. ARL trying to give one last push, but can't do it. So Bruce Lee Harding goes to P5, ARL in 6th, and Martin in the 7th position, Ginger Tiger in 8th. Rick looks like he's going to finish in 9th, Sir Spud in the 10th position. Mikey in 11th, Cassidy in 12th, 13th is Joe Hamster, then Daryl and JP. Of course, our 2 DNFs, unfortunately, from this race. Just waiting for, looks like 2 drivers crossing the line. Then, of course, we will talk to Rudo, Cameron, and Nitrogash if they decided they want an interview. And just what an interesting strategy race. This wasn't a nail-biter in the sense that you had constant battles for the lead. But this was one of the most interesting strategy races that I think that I've had the pleasure of calling for the Invictus Racing League. Because you had 2 different strategies that had every chance of working and winning. And ultimately, it was decided by a driver's mistake. And your unofficial results, of course, pending any steward inquiries for the Invictus Racing League's Realistic Performance League Spanish Grand Prix, is Rudo in 1st, 2nd place Cameron, Nitrogash in 3rd, Speed Queen 80 in 4th, 5th is Bruce Lee Harding, ARL in 6th, 7th is Martin, Ginger Tiger in 8th, 9th is Rick, 10th is Sir Spud, Mikey in 11th, 12th is Cassidy, 13th is Joe Hamster, 14th is Daryl, and JP in the 15th position. And we do have our winner of Rudo and P2 of Cameron Searle with us. Hopefully we can get Nitrogash in here just a moment as well. But for the 2 of you, please make sure that you have allowed your voices to be shared. If you don't know how to do that, go over to the party settings, click Always Allow, and let me know when you're ready.
All good? Yeah, I'm in.
All right. And now we got Nitrogash in here as well, so we'll have to give him the drill, of course. Nitrogash, make sure that you've got your voice allowed to be shared. Go over to the party settings, click Always Allow, and let me know when you're ready.
Yeah, I'm all good, mate. Yeah.
All right, so we'll start with Rudo. A very impressive win here. The medium to hard strategy really doing you a favor here, but when Cameron ran you down, were you starting to second guess that strategy?
No, I wasn't. That was the strategy that I was going to go with. Like, Cameron has obviously got like super pace anywhere, but especially here. And I was surprised to see him go onto the mediums, so that he was two stopping. So he was probably just trying to make it fun for himself. But yeah, my strategy is my strategy, and I won't change from that. I think it was the right call. Yeah, I'm just not in Cameron's league, so I would have probably been happy with P2, but when he was chasing me down, I didn't want to make it easy because I was hoping that if I could keep him behind for a lap or two, the softs would then like die off, and I'd have a chance on the last couple of laps. But we went side by side, and I don't know if we touched or what have you. But yeah, obviously crossed the line first, but I'm not entirely sure what happened.
So how does this change your perspective as far as the championship goes? Because you've got a win, and you gained on MDJ today because he wasn't here.
Yeah, I think we've had a good result because Lee finished third in the sprint and fifth in the feature as well. So we've had a good result for the constructors. Look, the drivers' championship is close, but I've got two very good drivers that we're up against. So, I'm under no illusions that I've got a better car and things like that. So, in reality, they probably deserve one of those to be champion, but we'll try. We'll give it a go.
Well, looking forward to seeing how the battle plays out from here. Congratulations on your win.
Thank you.
And Cameron, P2 on the day. Oh, so close to P1. First things first, what happened when you got side by side with Rudo?
Well, first make sure you can hear me.
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, it was honestly one of the best battles I've had in a long time. I think, yeah, between that one and Speed Queen earlier in the race, brilliant battles. But no, it's just at turn 10, I just got on the throttle a little bit. Just as I touched the curb and just round it went. After that, I was just hoping I had enough laps to catch, but just fell short.
And so now the same question to you. With MDJ not being here today, it's still a second place finish for you. That's still a haul of points. So you've gained on him. How does this change your perspective for the championship?
I think, well, we've all missed one now, so now it's a fair fight to the end, I think. It's the best way to put it. Ruddo, MDJ, may the best man win.
Well, fair enough. And I was bragging on MDJ, saying this is what consistency does for you, is it gets you into the points lead, only for him to not show up today. So that is an interesting way to look at it, a fair fight, but it's going to be an interesting fight, I think. So congratulations.
Yeah, well, we've all missed one now, so that's more the meaning. But yeah, congrats to Ruddo. Between us, P1 and P2 in both races.
Yeah.
And now we'll go to Nitro Gash in P3. And Nitro Gash, you were kind of like the quiet man the whole time. You weren't really up there fighting with Cameron and Rudo for the lead, but it looked like you had a similar strategy to what Daryl Witham was trying to do, starting on the hard tires, and ultimately that got you a podium.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way I went on Monday, so I was pretty set on doing the same thing. Yeah, Daryl was quicker than me in the Red Bull, but unfortunately he dropped it going, I think, up to the second DRS straight, up that way. Or else he'd have been with me. I had good pace on the hards. I don't know, I think Bruce and whoever it was in front of me were fighting. I caught them up. They were on mediums, and then they sort of pulled away again a bit, but I managed to stay in the DRS, which helped. And then, just put the mediums on. I thought Speed Queen would get me when she put the softs on, but she got to me, and then I think her tyres died by the time she got to me, so luckily, just hung on.
So, what were you expecting going into the race today, and did you exceed those expectations, or did you pretty much hit them spot on?
I didn't think I'd get a podium, especially, there's a lot of quick guys at the front there after the sprint race. So just good points, really. I was just aiming to get good points, but it worked out well. You got away well, stayed out of trouble, stayed out of any incidents in that race, so hopefully that race is clean, and that's all I wanted to do, really.
Well, it was P3 for you, and a bit of a lonely P3, it seems, but all the same, points are points. Congratulations.
I'll take a lonely race, trust me, if it's P3.
Fair enough. And with that, that's all the time that we have, but thank you all to everyone who watched. Thank you to the drivers that raced with us, and congratulations to our podium finishers. This has been the Invictus Racing League's PlayStation Performance League, brought to you in partnership with GridFinder.com. And until next time, have fun, and goodbye.